Welcome back to the Fantasy Pros Football Podcast. I'm Dan Harris, joined by Mike Tagliere. You can find us on Twitter at DanHarris80 and at Mike Tagliere NFL. Right off the bat, I just want to thank CBS Sports HQ for supporting the Fantasy Pros Football Podcast. CBS Sports HQ is a network that streams 24/7 and brings you top-tier sports and fantasy coverage. To watch anytime from anywhere, download the CBS Sports app and watch CBS Sports HQ today. Tags, we were just sitting here right before recording, watching the very end of the Bears game, so I already know what the answer is to this question, but how you doing?
Not great. I think that's the best way I could put it. That is PG-13 for the show. The game's, to be fair, I'm glad that you said that the game's over where we were watching the ending, because there's 31 seconds left in the Bears game. They just gave up a touchdown, and the ball's going to be in Mitch Trubisky's hands, which doesn't make me feel great as a Bears fan. So I told Dan, let's just go ahead and record so I don't have to watch it. I mean, it's on. I can clearly see it, on my TVs here in the basement. But it's not a great Sunday for a Bears fan. We'll say that.
I was debating, basically, and really my only concern here is how to make this the most optimal show that I can. So I was debating whether or not to do it during the very end as the Broncos were driving, but in the end, I just couldn't do it to you. It was a rough one. You've still got 24 seconds left, so if you hear some screaming in the background, we know what's going to happen here. But all right, Tags, look, we could spend a long time talking about the Bears. We'll touch on them at some point today, but in the meantime, other than perhaps the Bears, why don't we go into our winners and losers, and why don't you start me off here with one of your big winners from today?
So it was a guy that I was a little worried about after last week, and that would be Marquise Brown. Marquise Brown played a team-high 50 snaps for the Ravens in their win today. It led all the wide receivers. He was targeted 13 friggin' times. Like, knowing the guy has that type of target ceiling and knowing, like, his big play potential, Marquise Brown is suddenly a guy that, he has wide receiver 3 with upside written all over him. People talk about Will Fuller as a guy with wide receiver 3, and you put him in your lineup because you understand he's not going to be, a superstar every single week, but Marquise Brown may not be a superstar every week, but a guy that I compared to Deshaun Jackson during the draft process. I obviously like him, and Lamar Jackson's looked pretty good through 2 games. I know that the schedule has been really kind, but at the same time, the schedule is going to be good moving forward. I've already looked at that, so Marquise Brown is a big winner for me today.
Yeah, I believe they get the Chiefs next week.
Yep, they do.
They get the Chiefs. Well, let me ask something, Tex. I'm not going to hold you to it. I know you start working on your rest of season rankings almost immediately after Sunday's over. You had them, and I'm going to use half PPR here rankings because that's generally what we use for the accuracy competition, so I'll stick with those. You had him 39th coming in, which is pretty high. I had him 46 coming into this week. Where do you expect roughly he's going to move then after this week?
Actually, I've already adjusted my rankings, so it's already published, so you can actually see my live. I actually was going through it during the afternoon games, updating my rankings, and I have him at the number 39 wide receiver right now. So that's it. It's basically borderline wide receiver 3 territory, and he's someone that, in a really good matchup, you want to play him. But the issue is that the Ravens defense is playing very well, and if they continue to play well, we might not see those pass attempts that we want in order to justify, like consistent fantasy numbers. So he's just outside that range. But I mean, if you had to ask me between Marquise Brown and someone like Robbie Anderson, I'd probably take Marquise Brown right now.
Yeah, I mean, Jackson looks just incredible. 272 yards passing today. And he obviously added the rushing yards. We'll get to him in a bit, but I agree. I mean, Brown, and I'm annoyed at you because you've already updated your rankings. So what I'm looking at right now to compare how you had him going in is just useless. But you're very good at your job, so I do respect that at the very least, even though it makes my job a little harder. I agree with you. I think Brown is going to be, at this point, moving him up into the borderline wide receiver 3 territory, 100%, and he's got upside for much more. I mean, if this is what Lamar Jackson's going to be, I think he could legitimately be a guy who you just put in your lineup every single week without worrying about it. And he, there are some tough matchups, of course, for the Ravens because they play in a tough division with generally tough defenses. They've got, Cleveland, who's not bad, Pittsburgh, they got to go to Seattle and stuff like that. But he's definitely moving up the board. Okay, how about number 2, your second winner of the day?
John Ross. John Ross delivered again, and it was I didn't want to go all in on John Ross after one big week. We know how these things can happen, but he's clearly a big part of the offense. And for some people saying he relies on the big play too much. Yeah, he does rely on big plays. So does Marquise Brown. So does Will Fuller. These guys are usable in fantasy football, and clearly Zach Taylor has an idea for what John Ross should be in the offense. Got a lot of targets again today, and when AJ Green comes back to the offense, it's only going to help someone like John Ross get clear down the field, because if you leave like AJ Green in man coverage, you're in big trouble. So John Ross, despite some people thinking he's a sell high, I'm not really one of them.
All right. I mean, I think that's fair. I'm not sure whether or not I viewed him that way coming in because, again, the touchdown, you're right, his big play, I think it was 64 yards or something like that, a lengthy one at the very end of a game that was an entire blowout. Now, he did get 8 targets in the game. He had 4 catches for 112 yards and that touchdown. But part of me was thinking, and I didn't watch the game, I wasn't watching the game closely, at least at that point. Part of me was almost willing to write that off and think of him as not necessarily a winner. I mean, his overall numbers, of course, given what you got, but thinking that, generally speaking, it was a very late touchdown in a blowout game. That doesn't bother you, though, huh? You think
no, because I think there's going to be a lot of those blowout games for the Bengals. I mean, if you watch that game, and I watched a lot of it, there was some bad tackling on the Bengals side of the ball. I mean, it made like that game against like that Chris Carson had against the Bengals look bad. Actually, I know he had 2 touchdowns, but his limited yardage, it made it look a lot worse considering like how bad the Bengals were on defense. And it kind of goes back to the preseason when we saw Mecole Hardman have a big play against them, and everybody's like, oh, and they're like, well, it's the Bengals third stringers, and I'm sitting there watching the game today, and I'm like, well, what's the difference? You know?
Yeah. No, I was a little surprised just because of how they looked against Seattle. I mean, they were competent, and a lot of it was about the offense, but they held Seattle in check, and you saw today what Seattle can do. Against, unless you basically want to write off the Steelers defense, Seattle has a pretty strong, offense, not explosive, but certainly strong enough. So there is something I have to point it out right now. As we are watching with 1 second left, there is a field goal going up for the Bears to try to win the game, and I'm going to wait because I'm a second ahead of tag.
Oh my God. The Bears win. What the hell is happening?
I mean, I've been watching this, and so if I've sounded distracted, you know why. But I've been watching this knowing that they have a chance to win this. You should have heard tags before I click the record button. I mean, legitimately, and I'm a Jets fan, so I am used to like watching futility at its best. Tags was despondent. I could barely comprehend what he was saying as he was watching that last drive, and nor would he basically even let me consider the fact that if Joe Flacco converted that 2-point conversion, that the Bears could actually win the game. So congratulations. Now the show is going to be amazing because you're ready?
Yeah, but in a better mood now. I mean, we don't really have to talk much about that game because it was just terrible to watch. Outside of the fact that Emmanuel Sanders put on a show against that Bears defense, ate them up over the middle of the field. Man, that was a bad game to watch. I'm just happy for the Bears defense. Like, this Bears team obviously has a long way to go anywhere, and they need Trubisky to play better. But wow, that defense deserved better than to go 0-2 to start the year.
Well, they do walk away with a pretty ugly victory, but let's bring it down a little bit because you're excited. Let's bring it down to the losers here. Who do you got for your first loser?
Donte Moncrief.
I mean, every year, by the way, this is every year this is going to be the year for Moncrief, and he's just terrible.
I wasn't on him this year. I said, when you're on your third team in 3 years, it kind of says something about you, the player. The teams just continually move on from him. So I wasn't a fan of him. I would have rather had James Washington because I felt like the upside was there. There was more unknown with him, right? Donte Moncrief had 10 targets last week, but then you come in today's game, he saw 1 target. And on that 1 target, by the way, it literally was right in his basket. The ball bounced right out, intercepted. So Mason Rudolph has an interception on his record because of that, but it shouldn't have been. Donte Moncrief might be getting benched after that. James Washington, if he walks in that starting lineup, if Mason Rudolph is, starting quarterback for the Steelers moving forward, depending on what's going on with Ben Roethlisberger, we could see James Washington be like a fantasy performer.
Wow. That's where you're going with that? I mean, realistically, first of all, let's briefly, because we're here, we're going to do another loser before we get there, but let's talk about Ben. He leaves with some sort of elbow injury. The latest I've heard is he's going to get an MRI tomorrow. There are also rumors that he has been bothered by his elbow before this game. It's not something that just cropped up here. So
naturally,
this does not sound like this is going to be just he's going to come back next week. Look, it's Sunday night. I don't want to make any pronouncements or anything like that. But let me ask something. What happens? We'll get into this more, but what happens? James Conner, by the way, also left the game with a knee injury. So who the heck knows? The Steelers right now are in disarray. But what happens generally to the Steelers offense if Big Ben, assume Conner's healthy for a second, if Big Ben has to miss a substantial amount of time? Out of curiosity, what is the effect on Juju Smith? I assume you're not starting any receiver or any. I mean, you might start McDonald, of course, who had 2 touchdowns today. But what's the impact on the Steelers' offense if Ben has to miss a substantial amount of time?
It would definitely hurt players. They're much less touchdown potential for Juju Smith-Schuster. He would move into that high end wide receiver 2 territory with like a Stephon Diggs. That's probably where I would place him in my rankings if we knew that Roethlisberger was going to miss big time. James Washington was actually be a winner. He played college ball with Mason Rudolph, and those two connected on the deep ball quite frequently. And again, with Donte Moncrief struggling, I think James Washington's going to find his way into the lineup, and we would see him take more deep shots to James Washington. Vance McDonald, both of his touchdowns today came from Mason Rudolph, so he's not someone I want to downgrade too much, but I think Juju would be the biggest loser, and obviously James Conner, because teams would not respect Rudolph as much as they do Roethlisberger, so he's going to continually see stacked fronts. That offensive line hasn't done much blocking for him to begin with. The offense just looks, that team without Antonio Brown just looks like a different team. So, yeah, it hurts everybody, I would say, except for maybe like a James Washington.
I'm going to just put in a note to our producer that can you book James Washington on the show, because this is by far the most positive that anyone has ever talked about him, considering he had 3 targets and 2 catches for 23 yards. I mean, immediately right off the bat, Tags was like, Moncrief is a loser, but James Washington could do more. And now you're like, well, James Washington has done nothing at all so far this season, and he was a guy who we were hoping could be the number 2. I mean, you really think that he could actually be somebody who could even be in the range of startable options?
Well, I wouldn't want to start him right away, but I just want to see like a clear shift in snaps away from Donte Moncrief and towards James Washington. That's like the first step of what I need to see in order to trust him. But as I mentioned, it's like you look for those connections, those backup connections, like someone like Josh Rosen with Preston Williams. He's been playing with him a lot more with the backups, so he has a natural connection when he comes into the game with like a Preston Williams over Devontae Parker, who had 7 targets today and didn't catch anything. He was shadowed by one of the best cornerbacks in football, in Stephon Gilmore, but it's, that Miami team is a joke in itself. But it's more of a situation to monitor, and if someone has dropped James Washington, I'm of the mindset you pick him up.
Interesting. Okay. All right. How about loser number 2 here?
Dante Pettis. He played more snaps. Like last week, he only played 2 snaps, which is obviously not great. He did play more this week, but he was still like wide receiver 2-3 for them. He didn't see any targets. He's just kind of an afterthought right now. I don't think Garoppolo is a good enough passer to support multiple fantasy options. And if Dante Pettis is the number 3 option behind Marquise Goodwin and Deebo Samuel, then it's kind of the point where now I'd be okay dropping him. It feels weird because I thought Pettis was a potential breakout candidate, but once we saw him play into the 4th quarter during preseason, it's like, man, this is not a good sign. It forced me to move him down, but after 2 weeks, I'm okay if you want to cut him right now.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about him. I think it was 35 snaps, I believe, that he played. Obviously an uptick from the 2 that he saw in week 1, but no targets. I think he might have thrown a pass.
He did throw a pass.
Okay, all right. Well, I mean, maybe if you're, look, people are looking for somebody to replace Roethlisberger. Maybe they can pick up Pettis or something. But yeah, I agree with you. At this point, you want to hold a guy like Pettis, or you want a reason to hold a guy like Pettis. And right now, I'm just not seeing one either. So I agree with you.
And real quick, before I forget, I just pulled up James Washington's snap count. He actually played double the snaps of Moncrief, so they've already kind of flip-flopped it. And Washington caught both of his catchable targets in the game today. So, James Washington, he's, we're going to probably be talking about him on the Waiver Wire podcast tomorrow. But, James Washington is a guy that he should be rostered right now. I
love it. More optimism on James Washington than I expected today. I'm going to be honest. Oh, all right. So before we go to our next segment, I have a confession to make. Okay, my one night to kind of relax and get to bed early is Friday night. There is no football. There's not much to do. I finished coaching some soccer. I watch an episode of Ozark, and I get to bed early. But right before bed on Friday, I just quickly went to pristineauction.com, and I kind of just spent the next 4 hours shopping for memorabilia. And now I'm disgusting because I bought a Julian Edelman autographed helmet for my son. And while I'd like to take credit for being the best father ever, it's really just because the deal was ridiculous, and I could not pass it up. And that's what happens at Pristine Auction. They have hundreds of daily auctions ending every single night with guaranteed authentic items that come from only the most trusted sources. And because there are so many auctions, you're going to find some amazing deals like I did with the Edelman helmet that I'm secretly going to hide in my attic so I don't have to look at it every time I put my son to bed. I mean, yesterday I saw a Tyreek Hill signed jersey for $61.42 and a Joe Montana signed jersey for $108.25. It's free to register. It's free to bid. You only pay money when you win an item. So go to pristineauction.com. That's PRISTINE auction.com and use our registration code FantasyPros in the registration field when you sign up. You'll get a free $5 credit. And thanks to our good friends at Pristine Auction, we're running another Alvin Kamara signed helmet giveaway. Now, you've probably heard of bettingpros.com, but in case you haven't, think of it like Fantasy Pros, but for sports betting. And because they're the best, Pristine Auction has also provided a signed Alvin Kamara helmet for us over at Betting Pros. Just go to bettingpros.com/contest for details on how to enter. All right, Tags, let's get to our next segment. Now, after this, I'm going to write an article that we call the Panic Meter. So I'm going to have you do the work for me, if that's okay with you.
Oh, nice. Let's
like
do
I
it.
Basically do with everything in life. That's kind of how I do. I pawn it off on somebody else. So, Tags, let's go 0 to 10. 0 means you're like the Patriots facing the Dolphins. And 10 means you're about to make out with Sam Darnold and you're not up to date on your shots or something like that, okay?
Yeah.
All right, I've got to take a shot, buddy. I mean, they're my boys, so I got to do it. You ready?
Yep.
Cam Newton, 0 to 10, Panic Meter.
8.
Too low. 10, Tags. This is something where he's not running at all. I mean, if you're not going to sneak at 4.5 yard at the goal line, when is he ever going to run the ball? He's completely inaccurate. I don't know. I do not know if this is somebody who you're going to be able to start rest of season.
This is something I was worried about coming into the year. I had Cam outside my top 10 quarterbacks, and people wondered why, and it was because he's on the wrong side of 30 now. He has less rushing yards than I do through 2 weeks.
Yep, absolutely.
I'm not kidding.
Any Packers wide receiver not named Devontae Adams?
4.
Okay, which one or both are you okay with?
I'm okay with both.
Both
Both should be rostered. I don't think you want to trust them. I mean, Valdez-Scantling had a tough matchup today. Trey Waynes has just as much speed as he does. Geronimo Allison had a good matchup. So, while it was impossible to start him coming off of a 0-target game, to see him do well in that game wasn't surprising. The Packers' game plan, it worked out well to start the game, and it's like the pre-scripted plays worked really well, and then they just fell off. And I think part of it, though, it's something to watch, is that Aaron Rodgers, I watched that game, and his arm, it seemed like, I don't know if it was his elbow or what it was, or if he had a stinger, I don't know. But he was shaking his arm and looked in pain multiple times, and after I saw that, he basically wasn't throwing the ball down the field at all, and that's when production stopped for Green Bay. I mean, they came out with a win, but that's a situation to watch for sure.
Yeah, I've been looking for something on that. I haven't seen any details about, follow-up about the injury or anything. But yeah, I saw that too. He did not look good. He was not throwing the ball much after that point. So it is something where I monitor. I mean, you mentioned Allison having a good game. He did catch a touchdown, but 25 yards, he lost a fumble. It's not something that's really getting me excited. But yours take a 4 there. That's fine. How about Mike Evans?
So this is a mixed one. I'm going to put 5 because I think there's reason for panic a little bit, but I also think that there's no reason that you should sell low or anything like that. Just because this is a situation where Chris Godwin was always going to be good. Chris Godwin is also more versatile. Chris Godwin is also not going to see the tough matchups that Mike Evans continually does. That's not going to happen every single week, and Jameis Winston's going to have better weeks, So I'm not in full panic mode. I just think that you have to readjust your expectations for someone like Mike Evans, where if there's a clear-cut number one cornerback, they're clearly not going to go away from him and go more to Godwin, where there was, with Carolina and James Bradbury. So I am a little worried, but you kind of had to come into this year. If you didn't know the concerns with Evans coming into the year, then you're probably never going to understand them.
All right, how about this one? Panic meter on Mike Tagliere, knowing that Mitchell Trubisky is your franchise quarterback.
That's an 8.
Yeah. 8 is correct, actually. That's the exact right number.
Yeah, that's a solid 8 for me. I almost said 9 because, all I ever want to see out of quarterbacks, and I tell people this all the time, is I just want to see progression in a quarterback's career. I don't expect them to come into the league and dominate like Patrick Mahomes did or Deshaun Watson has done, but I want to see progression in their career. And that it's the reason that I've been down on Derek Carr is because I haven't seen any progression, over the last couple of years with him. Trubisky, he progressed in his second year in the league, but through 8 quarters of play this year, he has looked horrendous, like legitimately bad. And there have been shades of what could be a franchise quarterback, but if you're this inconsistent, there's no team that could stick with you for very long. I mean, the Bears are going to because they have so much invested in him. I think Ryan Pace put his job essentially on Mitch Trubisky. So I usually reevaluate those situations after at least, I usually wait till like a quarter of the way through the season because everybody's entitled to a bad week, maybe 2 weeks. Unfortunately, they came back to back for him, but he's going to have to get it together for Monday Night Football against the Redskins next week.
Yeah, at least it is against the Redskins. It's an easier matchup. And that's an error on me because I was really just looking to take a shot at you. I didn't want a nice...
nice guy.
Yeah, I mean, I've got to keep it spicy. What do you want? All right, how about panic meter on Tevin Coleman, who didn't play today, but Matt Breida had a big day, Raheem Mostert had a big day, Jeff Wilson scored 2 touchdowns. So what is your panic meter if you're a Tevin Coleman owner, assuming, he's coming back within a week or two. I don't know what the timetable is lately, but assuming he's coming back, what's your panic meter if you're a Tevin Coleman owner?
I'll say a 2. It's really, I'm not worried because like I was never excited to begin with. I mean, that's a backfield that even today, coming into the day, I did my live stream this morning, talked and took a lot of sit-start questions, and Matt Breida came up a lot. And I said, Matt Breida was someone I couldn't fully trust. Like, I mean, the matchup was great. He has looked good when he's on the field, but Shanahan clearly wants a timeshare of some sort, and he's been very unpredictable in San Francisco. So in seeing the snap count, seeing that Raheem Mostert played more snaps, a higher percentage of the snaps than Breida is a little concerning. Seeing Jeffrey Wilson get some goal line carries is concerning. There's just a whole lot of concerning things going on there. So I really just don't, if you can sell Matt Breida high right now, do it.
All right, last one, Tags. And, this one might be a little surprising, but Adam Thielen. He had 8 targets, 5 catches, 75 yards today. He now has 11 targets, 8 catches, 118 yards in 2 games. What's the panic meter on Thielen?
0.
Okay.
I'm not the least bit concerned. Kirk Cousins had a terrible game this week, and like he was under pressure constantly. He was pressured on like I think 60% of his dropbacks, which was the highest in the NFL through the first 2 weeks. He was constantly pressured by that Green Bay defense, and I think people are underestimating the additions that Green Bay made on defense. They've looked like a really good team. I know Trubisky looked like crap. I know Cousins looked like crap, but what's the common denominator here is that defense is getting pressure to the quarterback, and that secondary, they invested a lot of capital there, and it's starting to come out. So don't be surprised if that's a really good defense this year, the Packers. So I am not concerned about Thielen. He's still a very, very good receiver. The fact that Dalvin Cook continually goes off, it's going to force teams to play man coverage against the Vikings, and that's always a problem to do against Stephon Diggs and Adam Thielen.
I agree that the number is low. I don't think it's 0 for me. And again, panic meter, it really is just more, I think, in terms of where you drafted a guy and whether or not you think he's going to produce like you expected. And Thielen, I think he was probably drafted maybe just outside the top 12 wide receivers. I'm not exactly sure, but right around there. And I'm a little concerned because I do think that in the end, the Vikings really are, and they should because Cook is incredible. I think they want to run the ball as much as possible. I think they want to limit Kirk Cousins' ability to throw as much as they possibly can. So I do think, to the extent people were at all hearkening back to the first half of last year, that they're probably going to be disappointed. But I agree, it's probably a 2 for me, but not a big difference. All right, let's move into the games, and let's start with the Thursday night game. The Bucs 20, the Panthers 14. We've touched on Newton, and we've touched on Evans. Let me ask you about O.J. Howard here. 0 catches. He's running routes on only a handful of plays. What are we doing here with O.J. Howard? Can you continue to start him or what?
Well, he's still running more routes than Cameron Brate. He's been on the field for 110 snaps, more as a blocker because he is like that all-around tight end. I think this is that classic scenario of buy low and sell high, where I'm going to buy low on O.J. Howard. I might not expect the breakout, that we talked about that was worthy of drafting him in the 5th round this offseason, but I'm still buying him. Like if you understand the tight end position, like ask people about T.J. Hawkinson, the people that legitimately thought they hit a gold mine with T.J. Hawkinson after week 1. They come out and I think he had 1 catch for 7 yards today. Right. So the tight end position is so volatile. You have to understand there's going to be highs and lows, and knowing that O.J. Howard is someone that people did spend a 4th or a 5th round draft pick on, and you can get him right now for maybe someone like Vance McDonald, I would absolutely be attacking that. This is the classic buy low scenario that everybody should kind of see coming, but people overreact after the first few weeks of football.
Okay, real quick. O.J. Howard or Delaney Walker?
I'll take O.J. Howard.
O.J. Howard or David Njoku?
Oh, that's close.
That's right around where the range is, though, right?
Yeah, that's right in the
range. That's about
yeah.
where he is? Okay, that's good enough. I think fantasy owners can sort of take your opinion on him. Real quick here, because I don't want to spend too much time on this game. You can only own one back in Tampa Bay rest of season. You can't pick anybody else up. Who is it? Is it Barber or is it Jones?
I'll take Jones. I mean, there's nothing guaranteed there, that's for sure. But I'll take Jones just because I know there's a ceiling there. And, Peyton Barber, he did this a couple times last year where he had a good game and people thought they had something. And then the next week he goes out and gets 38 yards on 20 carries. You know what I mean? So it's not a great situation. Obviously in Tampa Bay, that offensive line just is terrible. So yeah, I'm not going to go out of my way. I don't think I have either of them as a top 40 running back rest of the season.
Yeah, the right answer is probably neither, but I think if you did have to do one, it will probably be Jones, because I can't imagine that you're ever going to feel comfortable starting Peyton Barber despite his, fantasy effective game that he had on Thursday. So for me, if I'm forced to take one, I agree, Jones rest of season, but I'm not overly excited about either one. All right, before we get into today's games, I want to again say thanks to CBS Sports HQ for supporting the show. CBS Sports HQ is a network that streams 24/7 and brings you top-tier sports and fantasy coverage. From your initial draft prep all the way through championship week, fantasy experts on CBS Sports HQ provide you with helpful advice all season long. You can get all the latest stats and injury updates, along with in-depth breakdowns and analysis. You'll also receive the latest breaking news, highlights, previews, and recaps from all around the sports world. Whether you play in season-long or DFS formats, CBS Sports HQ gives you all the info you need to make the right choices for all of your fantasy lineups. And on top of that, it's free for everybody. No trials or end dates. It's 100% free 100% of the time. You don't even need a login. You can watch anytime, anywhere from your phone or at home with Apple TV or Fire TV or Roku. It really could not be any easier. Download the CBS Sports app and watch CBS Sports HQ today. All right, Tags, first game, we touched on it briefly. Ravens 23, Cardinals 17. I mean, let's talk about Lamar Jackson for a second, okay? We knew that Jackson wasn't going to replicate his performance against the Dolphins, but 272 yards passing and 2 touchdowns, plus the 120 yards rushing. I mean, it has been 2 easy matchups, as we said, and he gets another one next week, as we said, against the Chiefs. Where is he in your rest of season rankings for quarterback, and how are you, can he finish as a top 5 guy or what?
Yeah, I actually have him inside my top 5 quarterbacks for the rest of the season right now. I moved him up to number 5, and I was close to putting him at number 4, to be honest with you. It just depends on what I see Baker Mayfield do on the game we have tomorrow night. But this was another easy matchup, right? Like after week 1 playing Miami, then you go and you play against Arizona, who's down to 3 healthy cornerbacks, missing their top 2 cornerbacks. So they're essentially playing all backups in the secondary. So to see him do well again, it's not surprising. But what was surprising was to see him throw 37 times. I mean, that's a lot of pass attempts. He completed 24 balls. Like last week, it was 17 while playing not the whole game. There wasn't a game last year where he completed, I think it was more than 13 or 14 passes. So there's clearly a lot, they've talked about Lamar Jackson growing as a passer. And I said, if Lamar Jackson grows as a passer, legitimately the cheat code. Like it's impossible to stop, because if he has someone that like a Marquise Brown that he could throw the ball deep to, it's going to force you to keep the safety over the top. And then if you're forced to keep a spy on Lamar Jackson, who's rushing for 120 yards, then it's like the running backs are going to have basically 6 or 7 man fronts. And there's just so many things. And then Mark Andrews playing limited snaps, but seeing the targets and being super efficient with them. There's just so much here that Lamar Jackson, yes, some people have told me that they're getting offered crazy things for Lamar Jackson. Like if you're offered someone like Joe Mixon for him, yeah, I would take it. I understand. I do think Lamar Jackson's a top 5 quarterback the rest of the season, but quarterback still is somewhat replaceable. Unless, of course, you're Patrick Mahomes, because Jesus, I believe, man. I said after the first year, I was like, I'm not going to overreact to 1 year. I want to see it, go into a second year. And the guy is just, he's on a different level right now.
Yeah, he's incredible. But, that it might be a lesson, though, because we did this podcast last year, Tags, and we talked often about what you would do for Mahomes and whether you would tell him. And I don't remember who the person was when we sort of compared it to, but I remember at some point you were still on the, look, you cannot trade a legitimate, let's say, RB2 or something for him, or a strong RB2 or an borderline RB1 for him, because it's a quarterback and stuff like that. And to me, it was just somebody who was necessarily, if you had Mahomes, he was that much better essentially than the field, that he was worth it at the price. Now, I don't think Jackson is there yet, but I do think that there is potential for him to get there. My guess is I'm going to have him at 5 when I come in for my rest of season rankings. I haven't done them yet. I'm not as good at my job as you are, but I'm going to have him pretty up there. But he is somebody, I agree. If it's something like Mixon, at this point, I'm not ready to pull the trigger. But I do want to point out that I don't necessarily think that you need to hold that view the entire season. If this is what he does, particularly against the tough matchups like Mahomes was doing last year, I think it's fair if you're just going to be like, look, I'm just going to take the points where they come. And I realize that quarterback in a 1 quarterback league is a little different, but I might be willing to do that at some point down the line if he is able to keep it up.
That's fair. That's fair. I told someone the other day, I said, if Mahomes, if this is what we get out of Mahomes, then I'd be willing to draft him at the end of the 2nd round next year.
Right.
The dude just, it's been ridiculous. And, we can scream regression, and there's some people that are going to be outliers, but I'm always going to bet against those because there's a reason they're outliers. It's just a rare scenario where it happens. And Mahomes is like, good Lord, man.
Yeah. All right, let's go to the other side of the ball here. David Johnson does leave briefly with a wrist injury. He does return. He finds the end zone, but just 7 carries for 14 yards and only 1 catch on his 1 target without gaining a yard. And this is a day where Kyler Murray was fairly effective through the air, 25 of 40 for 349 yards passing. Are you concerned at all about David Johnson here?
No, I'm glad the wrist is okay, because I didn't know if it was the wrist that he had hurt 2 seasons ago that forced him to miss the whole year. When he left, that's what I was concerned about. I was like, oh no, here we go again. And he only played 34 snaps in this game. Chase Edmonds 23. So clearly he was limited in terms of what he brought to the table this week. It was a tough matchup against Baltimore. I don't think anybody expected a massive game against them. So I'm not really worried about him. Obviously, again, this offense is up tempo. Baltimore was able to control the clock with the run game. Lamar Jackson being efficient. So I'm not worried about David Johnson.
Okay, good. Well, I'm not either. I just wanted to make sure. Yeah, it was a rough game, but I was impressed with Murray, especially in the beginning. He was highly efficient. He kind of tailed off at the end, although he did pile on some yards. Another good bounce-back effort from Christian Kirk, 8 targets, 6 catches for 114 yards. And Larry Fitzgerald, still doing it, 11 targets, 5 catches for 104 yards. Let's move to the next game. Cowboys 31, Redskins 21. Now, this is interesting, Tex, because you moved up Lamar Jackson significantly, but, you've got Dak Prescott still as your 10th quarterback, 26 of 30 for 269 yards with 3 touchdowns. He does have a pick, but he also rushes for 69 yards. Now, you did have him 15th rest of season rankings coming in, so you moved him up to 10. But how high is his ceiling here? We love Kellen Moore. We both talked about it. I mean, is he got a chance to move even higher or what?
Oh, he does for sure. It's just I struggle putting him over guys like Brady, like Carson Wentz, who it seems like he has a connection with Deshaun Jackson, so that raised him up. Like Russell Wilson, Matt Ryan, Lamar Jackson. So these are guys that you have to consider putting him over if you want to go higher in the ranks. And it's not to say it's not possible. It definitely is. We've seen it over the first 2 weeks, but we can't forget he played against the Giants secondary, who has looked like complete trash, and then he played the Redskins today, who really struggle as well. I think there's going to be bigger days for Ezekiel Elliott, and it'll cap some of that upside for someone like Dak Prescott. But understand that once he did get Amari Cooper last year, he was, I want to say he was a top 6 quarterback over those weeks, if you combine them all together. So I might be a little bit too low. It's just more like playing the odds with the guys that are above him. But I think he's a safe QB1, and I think you could start him, 80% of the time.
Yeah, I think if you're in that range, you're fine. I'm probably going to have him a little higher than that, maybe 8th or something like that. I haven't done, again, the final rankings, but I agree that he is at rock solid QB1 territory at this point. For the rest of the Cowboys, I don't really think there's too much to discuss. I mean, Zeke rushes for 111 yards and a score. Amari Cooper finds the end zone. Michael Gallup catches 6 balls for 68 yards. Jason Witten finds the end zone again. Is there anything else that you think noteworthy about the Cowboys in this game other than Dak?
No, I mean, Jason Witten is a guy that, he was available on waiver wires. I took him in the last round of best ball leagues as a tight end, and it's showing, he's just like a sturdy presence. He's never been a guy that has been crazy athletic. He's just a smart player, and he knows how to read zones, and he does well against it, and he's fitting in, like catches another touchdown this week. He may not be like, he's not going to be George Kittle or Travis Kelce giving you, 100-yard upside, but a guy that can catch 4 or 5 passes a week for, 25 to 50 yards, touchdown here and there. It's not really a bad tight end to have on your team.
Yeah, I mean, it's fine to stream, but, again, tight end is kind of a wasteland, I guess, anyway. So once you're in that range, you might as well just play the matchups. On the other side of the ball, Terry McLaurin, 9 targets, 5 catches, 62 yards, and a score. Is this a guy that fantasy owners can possibly rely on rest of season?
This is one I was saying to sell him after the first week, and I'm still going to say to sell him after this week. And the reason I'm saying that is because there is not going to be a consistent fantasy option here. I know it's been 2 weeks, and just as like we tell people not to overreact, we don't want to underreact. So I have moved him up in my rest of season rankings. I moved him ahead of Paul Richardson. He's the number 1 there. We can clearly see that. But if you break everything down, he's on pace right now for 80 receptions, 1,496 yards, and 16 touchdowns. So knowing that it's very unlikely for a Redskins receiver to even hit 1,000 yards receiving as a rookie, we're talking about some serious regression on his end. And I don't want to be there when that happens because his value is going to go down. So if you can acquire someone like let's say a Marquez Valdez-Scantling for him, I would absolutely be doing that. I would even, if you can get DK Metcalf for him, I would do that.
Yeah, I think that's fine. My guess is I'm going to have those guys right around the same range. I don't necessarily think it would be a huge jump to get those guys, but I agree. They face Chicago, I believe, next week, so that's probably going to be a rude awakening. But I agree. You have him tags in your rest of season rankings at 51. I think that's about right. He's a guy, again, and I think he's a guy who you'll be willing to move up if this continues, I assume, right? Yes, of course. But for now, I agree. Not something where I'm going to go gaga over. Certainly someone who's outside of the starting range on most weeks. Let's move to the next game here. Colts 19, Titans 17. This is kind of what I expected here from a division game with 2 solid defenses. Jacoby Brissett, just 146 yards, but he does throw 3 touchdown passes. Marlon Mack bottled up a little bit, 20 carries for just 51 yards. T.Y. Hilton finds the end zone. So does Eric Ebron. Not an exciting day here. Are there any takeaways other than Adam Vinatieri missing more field goals and probably retiring tomorrow?
No, just the takeaway that Paris Campbell needs to be more involved in the offense. He only saw one target, but that target, he just pulls away from cornerbacks. Like they had Logan Ryan on him on the touchdown he scored, and it was a no contest. Logan Ryan's a good NFL cornerback, but Paris Campbell's, I don't think people realize he's bigger and he's faster than T.Y. Hilton. I think Paris Campbell is going to be the future of the Colts. Like that kid's going to be a player. So if you could if you can get him in like dynasty leagues right now, he's someone to acquire. Even with the loss of Andrew Luck, it seems like this offense should at least be competent. The touchdowns are a little weird. Like you don't want to bet on those every single week. So to see that Jacoby Brissett averaged just 5.2 yards per attempt, 146 yards passing. Marlon Mack suffered a little bit, 2.6 yards per carry. But again, people don't realize that Tennessee is a tough matchup for running backs. I told people about that with Nick Chubb last week. So don't overreact to this Marlon Mack matchup. And if anything, it's a good thing to see him get 20 carries in a game that he struggled. So, but outside of that, in the Colts team, I mean, T.Y. Hilton is he's another guy. Like, I hate to say that I'm selling every guy that had a big game. I don't want to say that, but he's had touchdowns in back-to-back weeks with Jacoby Brissett. Brissett is not the passer that Andrew Luck was, and T.Y. Hilton finished as better than wide receiver 10 just once with Andrew Luck. So if Hilton is considered a top 12 wide receiver right now by some people, I would take advantage of that and try and sell him. Maybe you can get someone like a Mike Evans for him. I would still take Mike Evans over T.Y. Hilton.
Yeah, I like the Colts. I really do with their offense. They have a pretty good schedule coming up: Atlanta, Oakland, at KC. So they're going to be able to move the ball. I think it's just a tough defense, but it was good to see Hilton find the end zone. I agree, zero concerns about Mack. Again, it really, I'm willing to write it off in a tough matchup. On the other side of the ball, I also think there's little to talk about. The leading receiver in the game for the Titans was Delaney Walker with 39 yards. So that's the type of game it was. What about Derrick Henry? 15 carries, 81 yards, and a touchdown. He gets 2 catches for 12 yards as well. Where is he, out of curiosity, now that you've updated your rankings in your rest of season rankings? Let's do half PPR. So let's take into account some of the receptions there. Where is Derrick Henry at this point?
Yeah, he's someone that I keep moving up. He's at RB 18 right now in my rankings. I'm probably too low. This is where it's going to requiring some finesse. Like if you told me you wanted to take Derrick Henry over Todd Gurley for the rest of the season, I don't know if I would fault you. I was looking at this before we went on air, and Derrick Henry has received, I think it's 78.7% of the touches from the Titans' backfield this year. So they're clearly standing true to their word that they were going to ride Henry this year, because that number last year was 51.3%. That's massive, because it basically means he's game script proof. They're going to use him a little bit in the passing game. He is getting those carries. This game was closely contested, so to see him, in a loss, getting 15 carries, another 2 receptions, that's good volume and a losing game for him, because in losses over the last couple of years, he's been terrible. Deion Lewis only has, I think, 10 touches through 2 weeks, so they clearly want Henry to be that guy, and I don't think Tennessee's going to be a great team, but knowing they're going to get Taylor Lewan back soon, that's definitely a plus, and he's definitely going to upgrade the offensive line. So Derrick Henry as a middling to high-end RB2, yeah, I like him.
100% agree. I had him 15th before this week. I've sort of completely changed my tune on him, which I did not want any part of him in coming into drafts. I just didn't think that this is what it was going to happen. But I believed after that first game, and I think really he's going to be a viable, strong RB2, even in half PPR formats, absent a game where they're getting blown out, which I don't expect to see very often, because as we talked about, their defense is pretty strong. So I think really they can be playing from behind. I think that's fine. I think he'll still be involved. I think it really is just going to matter if they're getting totally blown out, which I don't expect to happen all that often. Let's move to the next game here. Seahawks 28, Steelers 26. I think we have covered the Steelers side of the ball here. We talked about Big Ben's injury. We talked about what the impact would be. So let's talk about the Seahawks here. A huge game for Russell Wilson, 29 of 35 for 300 yards, 3 touchdowns. He also rushes for 22 yards. Rashad Penny finds the end zone on a long touchdown. Chris Carson runs generally well, 15 for 61. He does catch 3 more passes. That's really what I like to see. They said they were going to get him more involved in the passing game. They are doing that. He totals 27 yards receiving. He does lose a fumble in this game. Tyler Lockett bounces back with 10 catches on 12 targets for 79 yards, and DK Metcalf catches a touchdown. So is there anything you really want to take away here from the Seahawks side of the ball, other than this was just a pretty good game for them, and that if they need to score points, you can expect production from a lot of their big guys?
I like this game to have sneaky shootout potential. Like, this was a game that I predicted to hit the over, and it did hit the over in a way that that wasn't necessarily great because it didn't look good. It was 0-0 after one, 10-7 at halftime. But the one thing I take away from the Seahawks side of the ball, obviously, Lockett getting 12 targets is massive, getting him back on track. DK Metcalf, now 13 targets through 2 games. He's clearly going to be someone that Russell Wilson trusts. That's a good thing. Okay, so Metcalf is a guy that is like in like that wide receiver 4 territory that I could see moving up boards as we go. Because remember, he's only a couple weeks removed from a knee scope. But the biggest takeaway is that Chris Carson might be a fumble away from like losing the starting job, because he did fumble. So he was charged with a lost fumble, and looking at the stat sheet, they didn't charge him with the second one, but he had 2 fumbles, and the one could have cost them the game. So Chris Carson, he is like, and he played a lot less snaps because of that. We saw more Rashad Penny, and Penny, by the way, 62 yards on 10 carries with a touchdown. He did well. They even involved CJ Prosise a little bit in the passing game. So Chris Carson, if there's one thing that can stop him from like a breakout season, it's fumbling issues. And Pete Carroll clearly did not like it. So I'd be curious to see how he handles it next week.
So I think those are all valid points, and of course you always want to watch when a guy fumbles. But the one thing about the other running backs I'll say is that Prosise got most of his work. I believe it was in the 2-minute drill right before the end of the half. So I think that's when it was. So he was really getting there. And Penny had that big run, the 37-yard touchdown run. If you take that away, he had 9 carries for 25 yards. So I don't think he really impressed. Now I agree. Of course they want to run the ball. And they're not going to want you to run the ball if you're going to be fumbling all over the place. I agree. I just think Carson has a little bit more of a leash. My guess is it was a little bit of hyperbole from the one fumble away, although maybe not. I think he's got a little bit more of a leash. I think they want to run the ball here. I think Penny still has a long way to go to prove himself. I think Carroll is not a guy who's just going to turn away from him. So for me, I'm not necessarily taking the negative away from this game from Carson's side of the ball as you are a little bit more, but I do think that it is something to monitor going forward, because I think if he can't control the fumble problems, that could be a real problem in the future then. Not immediate for me. Buffalo Bills 28, New York Giants 14. Let's start with the Bills here. Frank Gore continues to be Frank Gore. Yep. He dominates the carries. He gains 3.6 yards per carry, and he finds the end zone. This is all about Singletary here, who gained 57 yards on just 6 carries, and he did find the end zone. He did not get a target, but he left this game with a hamstring injury. Tags, have you seen anything yet on the severity of it? I mean, he was ruled out for the game, so it's probably not just a little tweak here, right?
I have not. So unfortunately, in my workspace, in my office, I only have 4 games I'm able to watch at one time, and the rest I have to kind of go back and watch or flip back and forth and try and find what I want to watch in between commercial breaks or whatever. So I didn't watch too much of this game. I didn't think it'd be very exciting. But knowing he left with a hamstring is not a good thing. It's a terrible thing, actually. Knowing that they have TJ Yeldon on the roster and Frank Gore, who obviously is still able to handle, a 20-touch workload at like 36 years old or whatever he is just crazy. But Devin Singletary, usually when there's a hamstring involved, it's a multiple week injury. Hopefully it was something little, but at the time when he was pulled from the game, I want to say it was a close game, and they almost immediately ruled him out. So I am a little worried about Singletary here, but it's something to pay attention to.
Real quick, let's just assume in La La Land that he's fine. Okay, look at this. Oh, fine, it was a cramp. He's going to be good to go. Okay, and he is good to go going forward. Where do you think you would have him then, knowing he's 100% healthy in your rest of season rankings? I mean, would there be like more of a changing of the guard here or what?
Yeah, I'd probably put him around RB 27, RB 28.
Okay, I think that's fair, and I think he's a guy who could clearly move up. I mean, he's really talented. He's super shifty. He's quick. I really like the way he runs. So he is somebody I like. Again, it's going to surprise me if he plays next week because of the fact that they ruled him out relatively quickly. But let's hope, fingers crossed, and I'm sure you'll know more as you and Bobby talk this week. Josh Allen with a passing touchdown and a rushing touchdown. He is so incredibly inaccurate. It's mind-boggling sometimes to watch. He missed John Brown on a likely touchdown early on, but he does have the Bengals next week, so he's certainly passable if you're down, Ben Roethlisberger or possibly Drew Brees, which we'll talk about in a bit. But let's talk about John Brown here for a second. I think I checked before you updated it, and John Brown was 53rd in your rest of season rankings. I don't know if that was after your update or before your update.
That was about right.
Okay, we were 20 spots apart. Where do you have him now?
I've moved him up to wide receiver 39. Or actually wide receiver 40, I'm sorry. Wide receiver 40.
That's fine. Okay, that's fine.
So, yeah, I mean, John Brown, I was basically waiting to see if the game against the Jets, if it was like, a one-time scenario where he saw double-digit targets, the secondary was really weak, they wanted to attack it. I mean, obviously the Giants are another weak secondary, so we don't want to do that. But in a game that Josh Allen threw the ball 30 times, John Brown saw 8 of those targets. So the target share is still healthy, it's alive, it's well. Brown, he's the type of receiver that only takes one play to kind of pay off. He could hit it big. And Josh Allen, if there's one thing he does have, it's a really big arm. It's kind of like Cam Newton in that aspect. He's kind of like a Cam Newton-esque quarterback, right? Like he can get rushing yards. He's going to run the football. He is wildly inaccurate, but he has a massive arm. And John Brown is the type of guy that could take advantage of that.
Yeah, no, I like him for sure. He's still outside that wide receiver 3 range for me, but not that much at this point, I think. I mean, I think he's got a chance to really move up there. For the Giants, I mean, look, Saquon Barkley is great as usual, 108 yards rushing and a score. Evan Ingram, kind of disappointing here considering Sterling Shepard missed the game, 8 targets, but just 6 catches for 48 yards. I think the real question is, do you think we're going to see Daniel Jones soon or what?
Oh, man. I don't know. I mean, the fact that he performed the way he did in the preseason, they didn't go to him. I think we always knew this was going to be Eli's job, and I think they're going to give Eli a longer leash, knowing that he was without Sterling Shepard. I don't think you want to throw Daniel Jones into this situation. I mean, when you have Cody Latimer and Benny Fowler as your number 1 and 2 options in the offense, like at wide receiver, that's a problem. Like, I don't know many quarterbacks who would succeed in that situation. So I think that they should at least wait until Golden Tate gets back into the offense, and then you get Sterling Shepard back from the concussion protocol, and at least you have those two. You have Evan Ingram, you have Saquon Barkley, and at least there's somewhat of a core of people that you could throw passes to. But this was a brutal matchup. I mean, the Bills are one of the best pass defenses in the NFL. So I don't want to take away too much from Eli in this game, knowing who he was throwing to.
All right, that's fair. That's fair. If you own Saquon Barkley or Evan Ingram, just don't watch the game. Just look at the box score after it, because it's just never a pretty affair. Let's go to the 49ers 41 and the Bengals 17. I think we've largely covered most of this game. We talked about the 49ers running game. And we've talked about the fact that Dante Pettis does not see a target. Deebo Samuel and Marquise Goodwin both catch touchdowns for the Bengals. We talked about John Ross. Tyler Boyd also catches all 10 of his targets for 122 yards. Nice game from him. Joe Mixon plays in this one, but not well. Just 11 for 17 on the ground. Is there anything you want to talk about from this game that we haven't covered already?
Not really. I'm curious to see when AJ Green comes back to the Bengals offense, because I mean, clearly, like, they threw the ball over 50 times last week, 42 times this week. The defense is going to put them in bad situations continually, because let's not pretend that the 49ers have a potent offense. They don't. They really don't. Let's not pretend that Raheem Mostert is a game changer, that Jeff Wilson is a game changer. They're not. The Bengals missed so many tackles in this game. I would be curious, to someone that that tracks all that, how many missed tackles there were for the Bengals in this game, because this was one that I was watching and it was just ugly, and I just decided to turn it off because it was just, I'd rather watch something else than that defense that they were displaying on the field. So if that defense is going to continually allow those points, we're going to continue to see a lot of pass attempts. And knowing that the Bengals offensive line isn't great when it comes to run blocking, the running backs average just 1.3 yards per carry today. I mean, it's ugly, man. So they're going to have to move the ball through the air. And again, I think AJ Green is going to help open up things for John Ross. And obviously Tyler Boyd catching all 10 of his targets for 122 yards today is a really good thing.
All right, well, before we move on to our next game, I want to tell you about another one of our sponsors, Monkey Knife Fight. MonkeyKnifeFight.com has an offer you cannot miss. Play $20 across their Week 3 NFL contest, and they are going to give you $10 in Monkey Knife Fight credit regardless of whether you win or lose. That's right, you play $20 across their Week 3 NFL contest, and they give you $10 no matter how you do. Sign up now and get 6 months of FantasyPros Premium with promo code FantasyPros. That's MonkeyKnifeFight.com. Monkey fight, monkey win. And just a reminder before we finish up that I mentioned before that we're giving away an Alvin Kamara autographed helmet from bettingpros.com. Well, we've also got a podcast over at Betting Pros, which I host and on which Tags was our inaugural guest. And we do 2 shows each week where we break down the NFL lines for that week's game and then give you some of our best bets. And I offered 4 bets this week, including the Bills laying 1.5 points to the Giants and the Chargers and Lions under 48 points, and they all hit. So it's really useful information. It's fun, it's quick, and we just gave away a signed Christian McCaffrey helmet and are now giving away a signed Alvin Kamara helmet, as I mentioned before. Just search for Betting Pros or Betting Pros NFL wherever you listen to your podcast, subscribe, and win some money. All right, Tags, let's move on to the Lions 13, Chargers 10. I feel like if you simulated this game exactly how it went 1,000 times, the Chargers would win like 990 of them or something like that. Austin Eckler lost a fumble at the 1-yard line. The Chargers opted to kick a field goal attempt with our backup kicker rather than try to get a 4th and half a yard. Just kind of a tough loss here. Let's look at the Lions real quick. I don't really see too many takeaways. Kerryon Johnson doesn't do too much on the ground here, just 12 for 41 yards. He does catch a 36-yard touchdown pass. And Kenny Golladay looks great. A big game, 10 targets, 8 catches, 117 yards, and a touchdown. Any real takeaways here from the Lions?
Marvin Jones looked a lot better than the stat sheet shows. I watched a lot of this game, and Marvin Jones, 6 targets, caught 5 of them for 43 yards. There was one that he was overthrown on by Matthew Stafford, and it could have been a very big play. There was another one that I want to say was overturned due to penalty. I thought Marvin Jones looked really good. I continually say that he is going to be involved in this offense. Kenny Golladay, he obviously, outproduced him in this game. And I think that we should expect that most weeks, where Kenny Golladay is he's a, ascending talent, whereas Marvin Jones is someone who's he's 29 years old now, so he's getting a little bit older. They're going to shift some of that. But I think Marvin Jones continually looks good. The biggest takeaway here is that TJ Hawkinson, welcome back to reality. He's a rookie tight end, and I told people in the live stream this morning is that if you were able to trade TJ Hawkinson, and this is before this game, mind you, if you were able to trade TJ Hawkinson for someone like OJ Howard after someone was panicking after that week 2 game, I would have done that. And while some people might have scoffed at it, I mean, after this game, they might be like, okay, maybe our expectations were a little too high for TJ Hawkinson.
Yeah, you mentioned, you wrote a whole article about the issues with rookie tight ends. He's 3 targets, 1 catch for 7 yards. Now, on the other side of the ball, Austin Eckler has a huge game. He's got 17 for 66 yards on the ground and a touchdown with 6 catches for 67 yards through the air, but he does lose that crucial fumble on the 1-yard line. Meanwhile, Justin Jackson gained 59 yards on 7 carries. Are you concerned at all about Eckler here because of the fumble, or do you think he's going to still put up these huge numbers?
Not really, just because in the preseason he fumbled on the goal line, and they've obviously shown the confidence to go right back to him. So I don't think that he's someone that I'm going to panic over. He's played extremely well. He's done everything they asked him to do, and that would have been my one takeaway from the Chargers side of the ball, is that Eckler is game script proof. He's a guy that's going to handle a lot of the carries. He out carried Justin Jackson 17-7 in this game. It was a tough matchup against Detroit. Detroit's front 4 is really good, and they're going to shut down the run most of the year. So it's not surprising to see both of them struggle. I mean, Jackson actually had a good finishing line, but a lot of it came on one run. But Eckler being used in the passing game basically like Melvin Gordon was. So it's almost like swap out Melvin Gordon, put in Austin Eckler, maybe take away some of that upside because they're involving Jackson a little bit more than they would have involved Eckler with Melvin Gordon. But still, it's like a very smidge. You're losing a smidge of upside that you had with Melvin Gordon. So while Gordon is out, Austin Eckler should be treated as like a borderline RB1.
Yeah, no, I'm inclined to agree. I'm not real worried about the fumble. It was unfortunate to see. It surely cost them the game, among many other things. But I do think in the end that so long as Melvin Gordon is out, he is going to be a rock-solid, borderline RB1 in anything that rewards points for receptions. Let's move on to the Packers 21, Vikings 16. I think we largely covered this game. We talked about the receivers, and we talked about Aaron Rodgers on the Packers side. Aaron Jones has a huge game, 23 carries for 116 yards and a touchdown. Jamal Williams does find the end zone on a catch, but I don't really think there's anything to worry about there. And Devontae Adams completely abuses Xavier Rhodes, 9 targets, 7 catches for 106 yards. On the other side of the ball, Dalvin Cook, legitimate chance to finish as the number 1 running back if he stays healthy. 20 carries, 154 yards, and a touchdown on the ground, plus 3 catches for 37 yards. Stephon Diggs is credited with 1 catch for a touchdown here. Now, we actually had 2 because it was the first one actually was challenged and overturned for offensive pass interference, but he does find the end zone otherwise. Any takeaways here that we haven't touched on already from the Packers-Vikings game?
This was an Aaron Jones breakout game. That's basically how I'll classify this game. Aaron Jones looked head and shoulders above Jamal Williams, and I got tweets immediately after Jamal Williams caught that touchdown pass saying, "Oh, Aaron Jones, you told us to draft him," and blah blah blah. I'm like, what's happening here? Yes, he's going to be involved in some passing, in some of the passing game. That's fine. Aaron Jones, by the way, still had 2 more targets than Jamal Williams. He had 6 targets in this game. He had 23 carries. To get that volume in a game against the Vikings and do extremely well with it, he had 116 yards on those carries and a touchdown. He continually shows that he has burst. The Green Bay offensive line did a phenomenal job, though. I don't want to take anything away from them because they made massive holes for these running backs at times. And it seemed like to start the game, Minnesota just didn't show up as a team. Like they looked completely flat when the game started, and they dug themselves into, I think it was a 21-0 hole, and they tried crawling back into it, and they made it a game, but it ultimately was just too late. But Aaron Jones, this was a true breakout game, knowing that they had week 1 to kind of see what the players did in a real scenario. They saw that Aaron Jones is a more explosive player, and if his role continues to grow, kind of like Derrick Henry's did towards the, with the Matt LaFleur era last year, knowing that Aaron Rodgers might have something going on with his arm, Aaron Jones is someone they're going to lean on. He's going to have a lot better matchups than the one he had today.
Aaron Jones was in the Panic Meter article last week, and he was a 3, I think, which was basically me saying, no, you don't have to worry about this whatsoever. And I got a lot of pushback on attacks, same as you. People were not happy, but this is why. Aaron Jones is a really talented runner. It was good to see them lean on him heavily, and he's going to be a solid starter for you going forward, and there are very, very little reason to be concerned. Texans 13, Jaguars 12. Kind of an ugly game here, but let's talk about the Houston running backs for a second. Carlos Hyde, 20 carries for 90 yards. Duke Johnson, 6 carries for 31 yards. Discuss.
I wrote the primer this past week, and I told people that Carlos Hyde is probably going to out-touch Duke Johnson this week, and nobody wanted to believe it. We actually talked about it on the podcast this week, too, where we had Liz Loza on from Yahoo, and she told me that she thought it was a Duke Johnson week, and I didn't want to disagree because, Duke Johnson is a phenomenal football player, but when we saw Carlos Hyde start the game for the Texans last week, and we saw him, continually get the first and second down work, I think the reason that the touches were close to the same in week 1 were due to the fact that the game was just continually back and forth. It was a high-scoring affair. This was more of like a grind-out win against the Jaguars and trying to get that divisional win in your first home game. And to know that they gave Carlos Hyde 20 carries, by the way, totaled 90 yards. I know Carlos.
Oh, yeah, he ran well.
Yeah,
he ran well.
I know Hyde hasn't been good in the last few years. I totally get that. And I did an article basically highlighting the most inefficient running backs and most efficient running backs in football. And Hyde over the last 2 years has been the most inefficient. But when you put him in an offense that continually runs 3 wide receiver spreads, and he's going to see 6-7 man fronts, things are going to get a little bit easier for him. So this is kind of like a Lamar Jackson type or a Lamar Miller type performance out of Carlos Hyde. Nothing sexy, but he's going to give you flex numbers more often than not. Whereas Duke Johnson's the type of running back who it seems like his numbers are going to come more from game scripts that we can project a lot of points. Maybe the Houston Texans fall behind a little bit, and that's when he's going to be involved, maybe more than Carlos Hyde.
Okay, so out of curiosity, who's higher in your rest of season rankings, Hyde or Johnson?
Oh, man. I this is one of those situations where I'm going to have to dive deeper into it and look at their schedule to see how I feel about it. I would, initial reaction, I'd probably say Duke Johnson in half PPR, but it's not by a whole lot. I might say a couple spots higher, but I view them both, I would say, in RB3 territory.
Okay, I think that's all fair. On the other side of the ball, Gardner Minshew's second game, not quite as exciting as his first. He does throw a late touchdown pass to DJ Chark. He rushes for 56 yards. Leonard Fournette largely bottled up on the ground. He does see 6 targets, though, and he has 4 catches for 40 yards, saves his day a little bit. Anything here from the Jaguar side?
Leonard Fournette has 36 of the 37 touches for the Jaguars running backs through 2 weeks. That's you cannot replace that. And I know that he struggled a little bit today. It was a road game again. It was in Houston. If there's one thing that Houston, last year, they allowed a league low 3.13 yards per carry. So it wasn't a great matchup. But again, Fournette is game script proofed in this offense, the way they're running it. And under the new offense that they're running, he has only seen 8+ man, 8-man fronts, only 21.4% of the time, whereas over the course of his career, over the first 2 years, he was seeing 8-man fronts about 44% of the time. So I think there's bigger numbers coming for Leonard Fournette. Unfortunately, he's going to be playing the Tennessee Titans this next week, another tough matchup. So, but he is someone that I would suggest, if you have, hold on to him. If you don't have him, maybe reach out and see if you could buy him on the cheap before he scores a touchdown.
Yeah, I really love the catches. I really do, because that is what's going to save his value here. He goes against the Titans next, as you mentioned. Then he's at Denver, which we saw, is kind of a tough place to play. And then he's at Carolina. So the fact that he's so involved, especially in the passing game for me, is really what saves his value. Patriots 43, Dolphins nothing. I mean, there's very little to talk about here other than good gracious. But let's talk about Antonio Brown. Okay, we do not know Antonio Brown's situation. Okay, he may play every game for the rest of the year. this may have been his last game. We do not know. But he sees 8 targets here. He has 4 catches for 56 yards and a touchdown. Meanwhile, Josh Gordon sees just 5 targets, has just 2 catches for 19 yards. If Brown plays for the rest of the season, break down how you feel about Antonio Brown and Josh Gordon.
Antonio Brown. My initial reaction when they signed Antonio Brown, and it was like initial reaction. Sometimes we spit out these reactions faster than we probably should just because people want to hear our thoughts. And I had Antonio Brown. I said that he was a top 10 wide receiver and that Josh Gordon fell into the volatile wide receiver 3 and that Julian Edelman was a low upside wide receiver 3. I got a lot of hate on that message, a lot of it. And, taking the risk into consideration with Antonio Brown, I did move him down my rankings and I brought him down to around the wide receiver 17, wide receiver 18 range. But if you were to tell me that he's going to play every game for the rest of the season, Antonio Brown's a top 10 wide receiver, and I stand by that. He's just freakishly good. It's one thing to say that they need to get in sync and develop a rhythm, but there's another thing that says Antonio Brown continually gets separation because he's one of the best route runners the NFL has ever seen. And he actually should have had 2 touchdowns today, but Tom Brady underthrew him on the second one, where basically Brown tried to come back multiple yards in the end zone to get the ball, and it was broken up by the defender, and he wanted to celebrate. I think it was Eric Rowe wanted to celebrate that he broke it up, but in reality, it was he was beat by multiple yards against Brown. So this could have easily been a bigger game for Antonio Brown, and I anticipate they're only going to get bigger. Whereas Josh Gordon, this is not a bad thing for him because he's still one of the better wide receiver 3s to own in fantasy football. And the reason I say that, he's not going to see a top tier cornerback again. Like Antonio Brown gets the number 1. Like that happens. And if he doesn't, you're going to pay for it. So we're going to see Antonio Brown draw that number 1 corner, which means Josh Gordon is going to see something he has not seen throughout the entirety of his career, which is number 2 cornerbacks. So there's going to be spikes in his production. It's going to be a little bit more up and down, like we saw today. But again, the game script didn't call for very much in pass attempts. So I don't want to overreact to one game. So Josh Gordon, if there's someone out there that thinks he's worth nothing with Antonio Brown there now, I suggest reaching out to them and finding out what they'd want.
All right, I'm going to make the executive decision, since we're starting to run a little long on time, to skip the Dolphins and just say don't start anybody on the Dolphins.
Real quick, I do want to say Kenyon Drake, if you can, buy him for really cheap right now. By the time this comes out, he may have already been traded because they've talked to multiple teams about trading for him. And if that happens, his value is only going to go up.
Yeah, Jay Glazer did have that report shortly before the game that there is trade discussions going on. Not a good game here, of course, because he was on the Dolphins. So certainly monitor that situation. And his value would probably skyrocket if he got anywhere away from Miami. Chiefs 28, Raiders 10. I don't even know what you say about Patrick Mahomes, who throws for 443 yards and 4 touchdowns. I think Damian Williams left this game. Again, we were recording sort of when it was going on, so I don't know how serious it is. But neither he nor LaShawn McCoy look particularly good in the running game. As far as receivers go, Demarcus Robinson catches all 6 of his targets for 172 yards and 2 touchdowns. Kelsey has 107 yards and a touchdown. Hardman, 6 targets, 4 catches, and for 61 yards and a touchdown. Only Sammy Watkins, who does see 13 targets, sees only 6 catches for 49 yards. Is there anything you want to say about the Chiefs other than get whatever piece of this offense you possibly can?
Patrick Mahomes, I'm sorry. That's all I want to say.
Okay.
I'm sorry for doubting you because it was really fun to watch him today. I mean, they started out slow. They didn't score a point in the first quarter, but then all of a sudden we see a barrage of 28 points in the second quarter, and then they just take their foot off the gas because they don't need to. And then there was a long Mecole Hardman touchdown pass. I think it was in the third or fourth quarter. It was a long one. I want to say it was over 50 yards. I know that, where he took it to the house, but it was called back due to a holding penalty. And that would have just put like even a higher ceiling. 443 yards and 4 touchdowns without Tyreek Hill. Are you kidding me?
There's just no downgrade. It doesn't matter. It's just ridiculous at this point. It really is. Are you adding out of curiosity? I mean, Demarcus Robinson here or what?
Yeah, he's definitely deserving of an ad after what we saw today. Mecole Hardman is going to be involved. He's a rookie. It might take him a little bit more time to like break out or see as many targets as maybe some people would want him to. But whenever Demarcus Robinson has been asked to start, he's done a good job, like a respectable job. I don't expect weeks like this to happen, but like if you're in bye week hell and you're looking for someone to throw in your lineup and you know that the Chiefs are going to score touchdowns, why not take a chance on someone like him?
All right, let's move to the other side of the ball. Josh Jacobs, 12 carries for 99 yards. He looks good running the ball. And the pass catchers for the Raiders, you would expect. Darren Waller, 7 targets, 6 catches for 63 yards. Tyrell Williams does find the end zone, 5 catches for 46 yards and the score. Anything you want to say here?
It's a little disappointing to see Josh Jacobs not catch any passes when we saw Jalen Richard and DeAndre Washington targeted 5 times. That's a little concerning because after the first week, we really felt like Jacobs was going to have workhorse potential here. And it seems like he still is that workhorse, but I would have liked to have seen him on the field a little bit more when they go into passing situations because he was one of the better receivers coming out of the draft. I don't think that they need to avoid him if they fall behind in games. That was a little disheartening because I did like Jacobs an awful lot this week. But as for Darren Waller, I mean, I watched him again this week, and he's the better version of Jared Cook. Like, the guy is a top 10 tight end for the rest of the season. Derek Carr and this offense, the Greg Olsen offense, the John Gruden offense that does love the tight end position. Waller's locked into 80, maybe 100 targets this year. So this is not like just because he had a good matchup. It's because he's going to be targeted. So Darren Waller's a player.
100% agree. I had him as my number 8 coming into this game. He'll probably, rise a spot or two or something like that. But I agree, this is not a guy you stream. This is a guy who you leave in your lineup every single week. Let's move to the Rams 27, Saints 9. Just literally as we were recording right now, there was a tweet that Drew Brees is going to see a specialist. This does not sound like good news for Drew Brees, or that at least that he's going to play immediately or next week or anything like that. Real quick, I think we can throw out everything that happened in the game from the Saints side of the ball. They weren't game planning around Teddy Bridgewater or anything like that. What's the impact on the major Saints players, assuming that Teddy Bridgewater is a starter for the foreseeable future?
A lot of bad, like a whole lot of bad. Teddy Bridgewater isn't like a quarter of the quarterback that Drew Brees is. Like, Drew Brees is continually he's just like an underrated quarterback. He's one of the best of all time, one of the most accurate quarterbacks of all time. A lot of times he's fitting things into tight windows, and people take that for granted as its scheme, but you have to be dead on accurate when you're throwing into tight windows like he does. And I think you saw Teddy Bridgewater, he doesn't see anything there. He throws it into the ground. He panics a little bit in the pocket, whereas Brees steps up and he almost gets on those tippy toes and he stands tall in the pocket, where I would downgrade the entire offense. This would severely impact everyone across the board. There's not a single player that I would think would benefit from this. There was even a situation where I saw Jared Cook late in the game doing a crossing route, and he had multiple, like legitimately 2 players on him, like defending him, and they were in close proximity. It wasn't like, oh, well, maybe he did. No, he saw it and he still threw into double coverage. And even Jared Cook was like surprised the ball came his way, and all he did was try and knock the ball down. It was a terrible throw. And Teddy Bridgewater is not close to Drew Brees, and it's going to hurt everybody in that offense.
Yep, I agree. On the Rams side of the ball, let's just talk quickly about Gurley here. 16 carries, 63 yards, and a touchdown. He catches a few passes, doesn't go anywhere. How did your opinion change about Gurley's outlook rest of season, if at all, after this game?
Not much. It's still a timeshare, and the Saints did get David Onyemata back on the defensive line, who they were missing last week, by the way, but they were still without Sheldon Rankins, who's still one of their better players. The Saints defense was coming. They were traveling across the country to play on a short week. There were a lot of reasons that Todd Gurley should have had a big game here, and it was okay. I mean, it was fine. It's basically what you would get out of like an RB2, and that's basically where I have him in my rest of season rankings.
All right, let's move, as you heard, live, Tag's reaction. Bears 16, Broncos 14, really exciting game. Let's start with the Broncos here. I mean, Royce Freeman, 11 carries for 54 yards. Phillip Lindsay, 13 carries for 36 yards. Emmanuel Sanders does, we were admiring him when he caught that touchdown pass. But 13 targets, 11 catches, 98 yards, and a touchdown. I mean, talk about the backfield, Tags. I mean, what do you do with these two guys?
Throw your hands up in the air,
just run away,
and
or
just
what?
Say that we'll just understand there's going to be better days. The Bears defense is legit. They have one of the best front sevens in all of football, if not the best front seven. So you shouldn't take too much away from it. Like, these guys were continually swarmed with the ball. It was surprising, however, to see Royce Freeman targeted 7 times in the passing game. That's something I did not see coming, because I had Freeman down my rankings because I figured the rushing day would have been, sub 50 yards, and it was close to that. But I didn't anticipate him having more than 2 targets maybe in the passing game, and obviously he did have more than that. So it's something we need to revisit, but I also think part of the reason he got targeted as much as he did was because Flacco was continually under pressure from that Bears front. So I still think Lindsay is the guy that you should want to own, but it's more like mediocre RB3 with limited upside.
Terrible day on the other side of the ball for the Bears passing game. Allen Robinson leads the way with 41 yards receiving, which I think mostly came on that last pass play or one of the last drives. But Dave Montgomery dominates the carries, 18. Nobody else really gets anything back there. 62 yards and a touchdown. How you feel about Montgomery from a fantasy perspective going forward?
He was one of my best. He was one of the best buy lows in all of football coming into this week. And I actually did a spot on Chicago Fox TV this past week, and I said Montgomery was the one to buy and Tariq Cohen was the one to sell. And then seeing Tariq Cohen have the game he did, it's not surprising to me, just considering Anthony Miller was back in the offense, even though he didn't do anything. But Tariq Cohen was going to start to lose some of those snaps that he played in the slot. They obviously want Mike Davis involved a little bit. Tariq Cohen is not somebody that should be getting a whole lot of carries because he's just too much of a boomer bust runner. And the Bears can't afford to do that with someone like Trubisky and the way he's playing right now. So Montgomery should be considered a low-end RB2 with upside for much more if Trubisky starts turning things around, because this offense will obviously have much more scoring opportunities.
Yeah, I mean, the numbers aren't that impressive, but I love the way he ran. I just, he's clearly the most talented guy back there. So I am optimistic on him going forward, and I'm optimistic for you because the Bears won.
I'm not optimistic right now. I mean, that defense, I'm just, like I said it before, I'll say it again. I'm just happy that the defense didn't have their effort go to waste again.
I understand. Well, at least you won. Better than I can say for my team tomorrow, I'm sure, against the Browns with no defense and Trevor Siemian throwing the ball. But that is going to do it for today's show. Thank you to CBS Sports HQ for supporting the show. To watch anytime from anywhere, download the CBS Sports app and watch CBS Sports HQ. Thanks also to Pristine Auction, where they have a ton of great items up for bid every single day, and Monkey Knife Fight, where you can sign up using our promo code FantasyPros and get 6 months of FantasyPros Premium. Enjoy watching the Browns destroy my Jets on Monday Night Football, everyone. I'll talk to you next week.